Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 540th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today we have a returning guest, John Reid. We first spoke about his book, Moving from Models to Mindsets, Rethinking the Sales Conversation. Today we're getting into the 5 lost superpowers, why we lose them, and how to get them back. We had a great discussion, as you might expect. That's why I had him back, because the first one was good, and the second is good as well. I want to let you know about something coming up. The first time in 8.5 years, I've had a guest on back to back, and we went over 2 hours between the 2 interviews. His name is Ben Gay III, and we joke and laugh about it. He has a great self-deprecating sense of humor. He's been picked on for his name his whole life, but there was another guy that got picked on for his name that worked for Ben. You might have heard of Zig Ziglar. So Ben and I chatted, like I said, for hours. And I am just, I think I'm going to combine both into just one epic 2+ hour episode. So that'll be coming up in a couple of weeks, not too far from now, 3 weeks at most. But I shared part 1 of the video from Vimeo. And so take a look for that on Vimeo. And I'll embed it, of course, in the website and the blog, but that won't go live till I publish the podcast. But he was personally mentored by Napoleon Hill for over 2 years. Just an amazing story. He'll be 80 later this year. So he's been around the block, and he is still getting after it, still selling today. So that's just a cool thing, you know. Here in, I think May 27th will be my 9th year consistently. I started in 2009, just didn't stick with it. Started with a buddy of mine. So, you know, been doing this for 13 years on and off, and 9 years straight. And I'm still having pleasant surprises like that. So that was cool. Doing this intro now on Monday 17th. Had John's interview a couple months ago, so I've held off on too many interviews just so I want to get back to shortening up the time frame between interview and publish. I was trying a new team. They were okay. It got me behind a little bit in October, and switched. You may have noticed the lack of ads. I was trying out that red circle. Just didn't like the feel of it, and the control. I lost some insight into some things, so went back to Libsyn. So hey, don't be afraid to try things. Sometimes it'll bite you in the butt. Sometimes it'll be an exponential growth. So I'm selling the Make Every Sale course on demand. That is, I've been using Gumroad. I've been testing that out. But if you use promo code 2022, you can save 50% on that. And there's about 50 something left at that price. I started out with 75. So avail yourself of that. It's under $150, and you get all the videos, the workbooks, a lot of handouts. So if you have been interested, wanting to partake, wanting to invest in yourself to kick off the new year, head on over to makeeverysale.com. It should redirect you to the Gumroad page. And again, promo code is 2022. And save yourself 50%, but act now. Hurry. Quantities are limited. And they are limited just because I said it. I said it and I set it. Because it's a reality that scarcity drives sales. You know, you can do a time-sensitive offer. You can do a limited quantity. You can do both. And it motivates people to take action. And it's not that I like cutting people off, you know, but sometimes it's for their own good. Maybe it's for your own good. Maybe you tend to procrastinate or whatever, and there's a reason you procrastinate. You got to figure that out. Sometimes it's a good reason, believe it or not. It's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's intuition, your guardian angels, God telling you, hold off. You're going down the wrong path. Maybe, eventually, soon, the decision will be made clear. Okay, so don't always beat yourself up for procrastinating, But if you're always procrastinating, that's a sign as well. Okay, you should take bold, swift action when you know that it's time. But I always tell people, look, if you're going down the wrong road, go fast, because you want to get to that dead end as soon as you can so you can turn around and maybe not get back on the right path, but at least you know one of the wrong paths that you no longer have to pursue. And if you're on the right path, get going, because your competition is going to. All right, they're coming after you. You know, the old lion and gazelle and the Serengeti, right? You both better wake up running. So dive into something. You know, it's early in the year. Apply that New Year's resolution and get after it, okay? And I've never regretted investing in myself. I've never regretted buying a course. And sometimes I don't finish them. Sometimes I start them late. But you pull out a nugget, okay? And things like this, you'll always have access to. You can download the workbook, and I've got the videos. Maybe I stopped using Gumroad down the road or whatever, but I've got them on Vimeo as well and in a password-protected area. So if you're a paying customer, I'll do everything I can to get you access to the content if you need it down the road and lose a login or something, okay? Because these principles are timeless. These are the principles that I have applied formally since 2006. And a lot of them are things that I've just done through trial and error. Some of them were intuition, natural ability. Some of them bled over from my athletics, you know, playing college football, playing football into college. Leadership skills I learned in the military, they applied to sales. I share those stories. But just like Ben Gay III, I'm still in sales as well. I'm out there with you, okay, talking to prospects, closing deals. So the things I share are not gimmicks or fads, okay? They are the timeless things, and some of them you probably know, but it's good to have a reminder. You know, jiu-jitsu, we start out our calisthenics and our warm-ups with the exact same drills, because those are the fundamentals that will never go out of style, that you must always be good at. And you better keep practicing them, though, okay? And then we learn some new things. But I guarantee you there'll be some new things in that course, okay? MakeEverySale.com, promo code 2022. Go get you that, and then come back and listen to this interview with John Reid. John Reid from Jersey, welcome back to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. So you're not letting any moss grow under you, huh? We had you on a little bit back in the day, episode 354. We talked about your book, Moving from Models to Mindsets, Rethinking the Sales Conversation.
Yep, that was it. That was 354, the magical 354 podcast. Exactly.
Back in the day. Now, this one's going to be like 5. Which one is this? Let me see. I got a little spreadsheet. You know, I've gotten a little bit organized over the years. This is number 540.
Wow. All right. So every 200, I got to come up with something for you.
Man, I'm telling you. So you got a new book, The 5 Lost Superpowers, Why We Lose Them and How to Get Them Back. So is this about sales or jiu-jitsu? I hope this is about jiu-jitsu, man, because I need more superpower. Well, I need superpowers in both. So can you help me with either one of those?
It applies to everyone. It applies to leadership. It applies to individuals. It applies to salespeople. So there's that application across. It's more broadly applicable than the sales book was. But the sales book was sort of the inspiration for it, because in writing the sales book, as you might recall, I'm a big fan of curiosity and asking better questions. And so I would tell people that curiosity is a lost superpower. And in fact, we designed a program for a client where we talked about curiosity being a lost superpower. And that led to the thought, well, there must be others, you know, it just can't be one. And so we came up with 5 lost superpowers, things that children clearly have, demonstrate, and then somehow we lose them. Not like we lose them forever, like we lose our car keys, right? They're somewhere in the house. We just got to find them. So these are superpowers that exist within all of us, but somehow get diminished, and we may lose sight of their value as compared to other things.
Thank goodness for Teslas and iPhones. That way you never lose your key.
But you still might lose your superpowers. So the book's
But my wife, so when I drive, she will leave her phone. So she kind of loses her key. So even with a Tesla, she'll lose it. We'll leave the house. She's like, I don't have my phone. Text all the children. Tell them I'm with you. Like,
Yeah.
26 years of marriage, there's been no emergency while we've gone to the store or for dinner. But okay, I'll text them that mom doesn't have her phone. But they usually figure it out because they call and the phone rings in the house. They're like, oh, mom left her phone again. But I digress. Maybe that's a bonus. Maybe in the upgraded Inner Circle VIP Platinum package training, you could help me teach my wife how to not lose her phone. Can you make that program?
No.
Oh, man. All right. So I love that. So be curious. You remember the ABCs of selling, right? From Glengarry, Glenn Ross, and I've covered that forever. And I tell people, there's new ABCs of selling, and one of them is always be curious.
Right.
Ask better questions. Stop showing up and throwing up. Stop trying to fix everything, and thoroughly diagnose before you prescribe.
Yeah.
So why have we forgotten that? Why do we show up and throw up and think that's the way to make a sale?
A variety of things happen to us. When we're born, of course, we're wildly curious, lots of questions, but eventually we get socialized by education, by our parents, by culture that, you're rewarded for answers. So answering things is better than asking questions. We get rewarded for that. We get modeled by our parents some really bad question asking, leading questions. Don't you want to wear a jacket? Are you sure you want to hang out with those kids? So we see bad questions modeled. We see reward for answers. We see a reward for being smart, right? It's like, so it's all about being smart and what you know. And the system is designed for the sort of this explore then exploit. So we're going to explore, we're going to learn something, and then we're going to try to make a living on it, right? By exploiting it, what we know. And we end up valuing, what we know versus our ability to grow and learn more. And that's the whole fixed growth, fixed mindset. There's a lot of crossover to other models and other thinking, but that's what happened. The world just sort of sucks it out of us and tells us that, not so many questions. We hear stupid stuff like fake it till you make it, rather than ask a question. I don't know this. I guess I'm supposed to fake it here. No, you're actually supposed to ask a question here. That would be a good thing. So curiosity, I think they all start with curiosity. Because curiosity, you get into vulnerability, you get into being authentic, you can even be playful. I'm giving you some of the other ones, but curiosity is a sort of where it kind of all starts for many people.
Yeah, I see it all the time. And like crowds, right? People are afraid to ask a question.
Right.
It's like, ask the question because you're not the only one that has that question.
Sure.
But like, I'll look stupid if I ask this question. Like, well, you're stupid if you leave without the answer.
Yeah. Well, there's an expression that a guy named Tommy Breedlove shared with me once, and he says, the gift of going second. So if I'm vulnerable and this particularly for a leader, or anybody in a leadership type position, if I'm vulnerable and I say, geez, I don't know this, that allows the other person to say they don't know it. So it's a gift. The gift, it's a gift of being the one that says, yeah, you're not supposed to know it all. That's okay, because I don't know it all. And any manager, sales manager, anybody can exhibit that, that ability.
So you mentioned something there on that little riff about explore and exploit. What do you mean by that? Because I haven't heard that one.
Yeah,
a good one, but it's a bad one, huh?
Yeah, well, it's good and bad. I mean, there's the model at the end. Every chapter has sort of like here's what happened, here's what happened to it. It's research based, and then there's usually a superpower metaphor used, and the one for curiosity is cape. So it's cast a wide net. Read from a lot of different sources. Cast a wide net. Ask better questions that really make the other person think or speculate or evaluate or have a deeper thought. Perspective seek. So, we're all in love with our own perspectives and we all have this point of view and we all want to share our point of view. And it's sort of in the book, I say, look at you, look at your shiny point of view, let it go, find other ones that you don't share. And then finally, explore then exploit is what you want to do, but you want to continue to explore. Most people explore, exploit, and stop exploring again. There's a model called the curiosity curve. And it basically says the smarter we are, the less questions we ask, the less curious we are, because we think we know most of it. So why would we ask questions?
Is that kind of like the curse of knowledge, kind of the same thing?
Sort of the same thing. Yeah. Exactly. I think it's the curse of knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I guess they're similar but different, because the curse of knowledge makes us downplay what we know and not charge what we're worth, because we think, oh,
Yes.
everybody knows that. So yeah,
Right.
yes, the curiosity curve is related.
But you're right. The curse of knowledge can be a couple things, but it can be, I know it, and so I don't communicate it well to you, because to me it's all clear. And when I communicate, I assume you know all this jargon and all these words because it's so obvious, I think.
Right.
Like you said, the curiosity curve is really, though, the more I'm technically smart, the smarter I am, I run the risk of being less curious. I'm not really attentive to it.
Now, are prospects getting savvy to this? Or like, I'm not going to play this game. Look, just answer my questions. I don't want to answer all these questions. Or is there still room and ability, to have a dialogue?
Oh, I always think there's room for a dialogue. I think it's your, intent matters. So if your intent is to manipulate somebody and you think you can do that and you're going to be successful at that, good luck to you. I think if your intent is, I really want to know you so that I can offer value, I think I can offer value, but without a couple questions being answered, I'm not sure. So I think, yes, with the move to insight selling, challenger selling, all this stuff, you got to bring something to the table. You got to have a point of view. At the same time, you've got to be curious. I think part of the tragedy of challenger and hypothesis selling is this idea that I can still remain curious, that I can be wrong. I mean, you could do a hypothesis and be wrong. You can be challenger, go off, do all this insight and be wrong. But there's a certain arrogance. And I think it shows up as just a very fancy show up and throw up. It's just show up and throw up with a really nice suit on because I've done all my homework and I've got this point of view now. I think prospects are still interested, and everything you see says they're interested in context and relevance and can you help me? And so you want to demonstrate that throughout. I'm asking questions so that I can see if I can be of value. I'm telling you a story because I think it's relevant. I'm a big prefacer, which is signaling to the prospect or the client why I'm asking a question or why I'm saying something. I'm not saying it just to say it. I'm saying it because I think it's relevant, or I think it'll help you make a better decision, or I think it may be something you haven't thought of. Whatever that preface is, it's important because these days it's all about, do you understand my world? Can you really help me? I think.
So for those that aren't familiar, and I'm a little familiar with the challenger selling model, but not the hypothesis selling. Can you give us some reference to that?
I don't even know if it's a book. I know there's a whole theory around. It's a little like Challenger, because Challenger, they're very similar, where you come up with a hypothesis that what these people need, given what they're trying to do, is this. That's my hypothesis. So I'm going to prepare based on that. And
is that like for the first meeting?
Yeah, that could be the first meeting. And I'm going to ask these questions. I'm going to tell this story. I'm going to do all this because the problem is, again, your hypothesis can be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And you're no longer in a conversation. So many salespeople, I think, and what surprises me, I think the thing that surprised me lately is that most salespeople, aren't in the conversation. It's not a conversation. It doesn't look like a conversation. It looks like I ask you questions. I ask you a series of questions, and then I, summarize what you said, and then I share how I can help you. Versus I ask a question, you answer it, and that answer sort of suggests to me what the next question should be. We have a facilitator with a great quote. I wish it was mine. She says, the customer will tell you what your next question should be.
Yeah.
Like, wow. So, because if you're really listening and you're in a conversation and you're agile and you're there, you're going to be able to move, quite seamlessly and not stay to a script or stay to a series of questions you have to ask.
Well, but how long does it take to learn that? Because that's not, a joke about jiu-jitsu and talk about it a lot because, I love it, but because our instructor, you'll ask him, hey, how do you handle that? He's like, well, don't get in that position. It's like, well, it's easy funny for you to say.
Yeah, my answer to that is it's easier to learn it than unlearn it. So what I mean, unlearn your current behavior. So if I get somebody brand new who's never had any sales training, they're good to go from the start. They know how to do this. They're curious. They don't have but anybody who's been in sales for 10, 20, 30 years and has a lot of habits and a lot of way they approach things and a lot of, been through some training that maybe was dated, some training back from the 70s or 80s or 90s that's now, pretty old, doesn't have the neuroscience, doesn't have the current context in it. It can be a challenge for them to get out of that pattern of behavior. You see in a lot of experienced reps, not a bad thing, right? But this desire to be liked, this desire for relationship, and really good relationships, but not leveraging those relationships to drive the business forward, but just leveraging those relationships for relationship's sake versus relationship for growing the business, improving margin, changing the mix, whatever that strategy is. So you see a lot of that, I think.
Yeah, guys, and gals, but I see it. I tell them, like, don't go fill your need for approval, right, by pontificating endlessly, to the detriment of the prospect.
Right. Nobody ever woke up and said, geez, I hope I meet a new salesperson today and I hope we become friends. It's never been said. What they do is they wake up and they got these issues, and then the phone rings or the email comes across, and is it provocative? Is it interesting? Is it compelling? Is it relevant? And is it creative in some way to stand out from the crowd? And then do you have the tenacity and the opportunity to mix the messages as you go forward? Do you have a stick-to-itiveness? But I think with prospects, it's always about them for me. There's some interesting research. I'll tell you some interesting research. This is years ago, so it's interesting to see if it's still valid. But the company did research, Forum did 1,000 years ago. And but anyways, the customers were more excited about the first call with the vendor than the second call. So you go, that's interesting. When the first time they were going to meet and have a sales meeting or whatever, they were kind of excited. We're going to meet these people. And then after the meeting, when they were going to meet with these people again, they're like, I think I'm less excited. So what happened in that first meeting? We'll show up and throw up, a lot of talking, a lot of stuff. And we teach prospecting. I say, look, what you're interested in is the second call. If I'm prospecting you, it's not just about getting you on the phone. It's about getting you on the phone a second time. And if that's my mindset, then that changes my behavior, because I'm playing more long-term. I'm playing more value. It doesn't have to happen right now. But, all this, I got to get this lead on the phone so I can close them? I don't want them creates a lot of bad behaviors if you're not real diligent about it. And I think most of us aren't. So reframing it to the second call and thinking, look, your objective here is to get the second meeting. All of a sudden, that first meeting then also looks different.
Right. Yeah, but I'm under the gun, man. It's in the month, end of quarter. I got to close these people. What are you saying, a second call?
I am. Now, if you're in the transactional sales business, your product is, it closes I got to close while you're here. If you're in the timeshare, the kiosk at the mall, and maybe sometimes insurance, cars. If you're in that sort of transactional, I got to make the deal in the month, during the month, and once you're in front of me, I got to get you. Yeah, you can throw a lot of what I'm saying out the window. That's a different type of sale. But if your sale is that you have a book of business, you got to maintain this book of business. The sales cycle is 2, 3, 6 months, a year, 2 years. All of a sudden, playing long ball is the right way. That may not help you in your short term, but it'll help you long term. So yeah, you whatever you've been doing the last 9 months led you to this situation. This isn't going to fix that. Mm-hmm. But what it will ensure that this doesn't happen again. It will improve your lifetime batting average. And this end of the month fear that you kind of find yourself in is because the behaviors you're exhibiting.
Yeah. But a lot of times it is. It's tough. You get pressure from the boss.
Oh, it's tough.
And it's tough. I've worked for some of those companies. Around this time, is towards the end of the year. It was December, actually, like literally the end of the year. And I was living in Austin. And this was like 2002.
Way back machine.
Yeah. And, my boss is like, fortunately, my boss understood, but his boss did not. And right. He's like, go up to, they want me to fly from Austin up to somewhere in Kansas. It might have been like with Sprint, Overland Park. I'd been there a bunch anyway with the previous company. They were like, go sit in the lobby, like wait for this guy to show up. And fortunately, my boss, I don't know how we got around it. I may have had to actually fly up there just to show my expenses, right? Show a plane ticket, hotel, rental car.
Yeah.
And I think I just flew up and just sat in the hotel, made some calls and flew home. Like, yeah, he didn't come in.
Well, there's so many bad things happening there that I won't dive into that analysis, but
it's terrible.
There is a both and, right? I got to deliver the number today and I got to deliver the number long term. And what are the behaviors that are going to allow me to do both? But so again, I've been in sales most of my career. So I get and I've had bosses who, but who said, and it's funny because it's usually not your boss, it's the person above that boss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Further removed from sales. And of course, if they're God help you, if they're like the inventor of the content or they're the
yes,
came up with the solution.
That is who it was. Yeah, it was the founder of the company.
If they're the founder, they think you just show up and you show your shiny object that they're going to buy. So they have no clue what selling is like. You got to decide how long you want to work in that kind of climate. If that's if that's where you want to spend your time. There's lots of issues you have to deal with in that situation.
So you talk about authenticity in this, and is that word or concept, is it being overplayed, or people, are they misusing it? Because I hear it all the time. I just try to be transparent. I just want to be authentic. And I'm like, oh, hell,
Well, if you have to say it, that's a problem.
Yeah. Here comes a confession, right? Just like you can trust me. I'm a Christian. I'm like, oh, holy hell. Let me lock my wallet in the safe because here comes some crap.
A lot of these things get overplayed. Authenticity obviously clearly is a childhood behavior because kids will say what comes to their mind and they'll say it and they'll, your hair looks funny or that looks stupid or, I don't like your cooking, whatever they might say. And they are themselves. When we talk about authenticity, we're talking about sort of the best version of yourself and sort of taking that mask off of business. So, saying I want to be transparent here probably sounds like a talk track, quote unquote. It doesn't sound like authentic person to me. We're talking about genuinely, if you don't, it borders on vulnerability, which also can be overused, but it's this idea of, being who you are in every endeavor. I came about it. I started in the chemical industry for Dow Chemical. And maybe you heard the story back in number 354, but I had never had a chemistry course in my life. I don't know anything about chemistry. So, but I would show up and I knew that, and I didn't fake it till I make it. I would ask people, hey, what does that do? What does that do? And it turns out people like to talk about what they do. And so they rewarded my behavior by telling me things, educating me, and then buying from me. And so I learned awful early, fortunately, the power of authenticity and asking questions and being vulnerable, and that people kind of like that. I think they wouldn't have liked it as much. And my peers, meanwhile, who were technical engineers, chemical engineers, they were trying to show how much they knew to the client. And I still see it. I'll see salespeople ask questions like, does the thermodynamic component of the XYZ impact that? And, they're putting all these fancy words in the question to show, look how much I know about process. And like, what are you doing? Is that question really? What's up? So they're trying to establish credibility in their question, which is just. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a fair point. I mean, authenticity it's you at your best, how you want to show up and being conscious about it. It takes some personal risk to do that and decide to do that. It's not being whoever the hell you are. So it's not like, hey, this is who I am, take it or leave it. It's not that. There's some emotional intelligence wrapped up in it, right? How do I show up? Am I aligned? Am I clear how I want to show up? And do I adjust to others? So there's a lot going on when one is authentic.
So I can show up hungover with like jelly donut stains on my shirt? Because that's me, okay?
No, there's a better version of you though. There's a version of you that's dressed and doesn't have, I bet, right? So this is all about the best version of you. First of all, how do I want to show up? So I made a conscious choice a long time ago. I wanted to show up as engaging, as funny, and as caring. So I can then look at my behaviors, my sentences, what I do, how I do it, and say, does that line up to that or not? Do my behaviors line up to my intentions? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But the beauty of that is that whatever those three things are, they're unique to you. It's not like these are the three things you should always be. It's like figure out for yourself who you want to be. Okay, you got that now? Then figure out what it looks like. And then every day kind of say, did I align to that or not? Because that gets into integrity, it gets into trust, it gets into, not saying things like, I want to be transparent here.
I love when they say, in all honesty, and say, oh, have you been lying up to this point?
Exactly.
Can I be frank with you? Well, I don't know. I thought your name was John. That's kind of weird. Go ahead, Frank. It's like, what?
Hey, the other three, resilience, clearly salespeople have resilience. You got to have resilience if you're in sales. You got to be able to bounce back, stay agile.
Optimism. How do we regain that? Because, you get kicked in the head a few times. It's easy to question your sanity. The company sucks and our pricing's all wrong and we don't have the gizmo. We're not backwards compatible with HTML 5.6.2.9. Like whatever, dude. And so we start making excuses. So when do we know it's our fault versus the company's fault and it's time to move on?
Well, it's always good to start from the paradigm that it's your fault because, that's the only way learning happens. That there's something to learn here. If my default is if my explanation for things are exterior to me, it's the company, it's the client, it's the competitors, then there's no chance I'm going to learn anything that's going to be helpful to me. So I've got to have an explanatory. What could I have done differently here? What could I, how could I have approached this differently? What do I own on this? Because I think that's always the first things first, right? Because then you can say, okay, how much do I wait till I give to that, and get feedback from others as well. So I think that's at the core of it. Now you have to also, I'm a big believer. I was just writing an article on something, but like, what's your lifetime batting average? If your lifetime batting average is you're a 500 hitter and you're in a little bit of a bad streak, you're probably just having a bad streak, right? It's a couple bad days. It's not the end of the world. But if you're a 200 hitter, then you're probably just a 200 hitter. And if there's 400 and 500 hitters around you, this may not be the right gig for you.
Right.
This may not be. I coached this person once, and this company asked me to coach her. They had a very complex sales. It was a life science company, and their sales cycle could take 2 years, 2 to 3 years. It was crazy, the length of the sales cycle. And I get to coach this person, like what motivated her. And it's clear she likes to ring the bell. She likes to make sales, and she likes to make lots of sales. Well, this isn't make sales, and this isn't lots of sales. This is 1 or 2 sales over a 3-year period. Talk about a bad fit.
Yeah.
The organization is not moving fast enough. Nobody's moving fast enough. The customer's not moving fast enough. Her tendencies are to push when she should, let the thing come. So yeah, she ended up leaving that and taking a much more transactional job and being happy. Mm-hmm. So I had to say, wow, it was really interesting to just see the fit issue. It's not that you can't sell, you just can't sell this. or you could sell this, but you'll never be happy. You'll never be great at it because you're not going to like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody thinks they gotta like be perfect at whatever. It's like Nick Saban, right? He
failed dramatically.
When he left LSU, I was so bummed, right? And he said, I'm going to the NFL, and I know that it stands for not for long. He knew it, but he had to try it, right? I mean, that was an itch he had to scratch.
Yeah.
And he failed. Went to the Dolphins, he failed. And so, but is Nick Saban a failure?
No.
Right? I mean, so find your groove,
Yeah. And that's what it's about. And that's what it's interesting. I've managed a lot of salespeople, and I've always been wary. I tell some people, be wary of the salespeople that tell you a good story that don't have any sales, because the great salespeople don't feel the need to tell stories about what they're selling because they're on to the next sale. So if you're a sales manager and you're running a team meeting, and a couple of your low performers are talking about these potential opportunities they have and what they're working on and where they are and all the things they're doing, just feel skeptical. Just be a little bit like, how about you sell something first? How about we show a sale on the board before we give you that much airtime? So it's very interesting, the correlation between airtime and sales sometimes.
I remember, watching Shark Tank, and we watched it a lot with the family over the years, because hell, it's one of the few clean things you can watch with a family, right? Yeah. But a lot of my kids have kind of gotten the entrepreneurial bug from me, and I love it. I think all the Sharks have said it at one point or another, but I remember Mr. Wonderful and Mark Cuban for sure. When they ask them, they give their little presentation. It's like, okay, John, tell me about your numbers, right? And and I remember Mr. Wonderful saying, if the first word out of your mouth when I ask for your numbers is not a number, then we have a problem. So talking about the stories, right? That's what I always think of. It's like, tell me your numbers, then tell me your story, but tell me your numbers.
Yeah, but in particular, that's the question I'm asking, right? That's the answer I need. Interesting. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. So I loved it. I was like, oh, that's money right there. Because you can always see the tap dance, the song and dance. And I love that show too, because I could sit there. I look smart to my kids because I would guess, like, based on seeing the dynamics, like,
sure.
They're gonna reject that deal. He's gonna negotiate that one. Oh, he's taking that deal. How do you know? How do you know? It's like, you just do it enough and you can just feel it, right? And it's the art of the deal, right? It's so good. But I want to go back. You mentioned something about, the authenticity and funny and stuff. What would you say is the role of humor in a sale?
Oof. For me, it's big because it's part of who I am. So I think it's authentic, right? And most of my stuff is self-effacing. It's almost always self-effacing, meaning I'll make fun of myself. I'm 6'4", I'm 200 and a lot. And so I'm big. And so I want to make it safe. And so I'll make jokes about myself. I remember calling a client and I asked like 2 or 3 closing-ended questions in a row. And I said, just, wow, I teach this stuff for a living. You think I could come up with an open-ended question, wouldn't you? And I'm like, oh, there's another one. So I'm very much in the moment. Clients will say you're fun to work with. It's fun. When people are having fun and they're engaged, they're more creative, they're more open-minded. Yeah. So if you can take some of the stress, take some of the, anxiety out of the room with humor based on yourself, but still carry that I'm a professional and I'm here to help you. It's there's a tension there, but you got to be careful, right? You'll be goofy. I'm not saying let's go be goofy, but you can use humor to break down people's resistance and get them to smile, and all good things happen then, right? I mean, people just more open-minded, much more creative, much more willing to listen to you.
Yeah, so that is what I wanted to kind of touch on. Like, when is the right time? Because like on my call this morning, I have a Monday morning group call with the folks in my program, and I tell them you've got to be. I always say our job in sales is hurt and rescue, right? Like we got to bubble up the pain. We got to get them admitting there's an issue. But we can't just leave them in that dire state. We have to throw them a lifeline, right? And let them choose if they want to grab onto that lifeline. But I warn my people, like if it's that moment of truth and it's quiet and it's awkward and you can see they're really noodling this, like, don't be funny then. You break that state, you relieve that tension, you got to start all over again. So I don't know if that's a lost art or maybe we're just not comfortable with that pregnant pause and that silence.
Yeah, right? I mean, silence is powerful, right? Negotiations or in any part of it, in asking questions, give people time. So yeah, there's a discomfort with silence, obviously, that salespeople have that they have to work through. I'm not as much. I understand the pain gain language. I understand the power of pain, but I don't go in thinking I'm going to find their pain. I never go in with that mindset because the pain will emerge. But I'm not, maybe I'm being too clever by half, but I really am not. I don't sit there, okay, hey, I'm going to go find their pain. It's sort of like, tell me about what are you doing? And I compliment, I'm like, oh, I like that. That's good. So you got to be happy with that. So, sometimes I'll be like, I've had calls where I said to people, I think you're doing everything right. I don't think you need me.
Oh, for sure. I've told more people no than yes.
Yeah. Because it's like, I think, I said, do you want me to try to convince you need me? I can spend 30 minutes trying to do that, but that seems like a waste of our time. So that's being authentic, right? Like when you do that, when you say, hey, look, I think you've got this well enough in hand. You don't need my help. That's authentic. That's taking a risk. That's being in the moment, right? That's a good way to be, I think, long term. Now, that maybe to your point earlier, if I got to make the number at the end of the month, I can't say that. I got too much pressure. I got to say you need me. But if they need you, they need you, and if they don't need you, they don't need you.
Right.
But I like the idea of humor as you go. You got to think about your brand, right? It comes down to the personal brand. How do I want to show up? How do I want to differentiate myself? Mm-hmm. Sales is also heavily about differentiation. How are my questions going to be different than my competitors? How is my rapport building going to be different than my competitors? How is my presentation going to be different? So I think about the sales differentiation. Most salespeople think about differentiation in terms of the product they're trying to sell versus the behaviors of them as salespeople. They'd be far better off, companies would be far better off saying, look, the products are differentiated. We think they're great, but how are you going to be different in front of that client than the competition? Because right now, everybody sounds the same. Mm-hmm. And therefore we're not memorable, and therefore it comes down to price, and therefore we give up stuff because we haven't clearly differentiated ourselves.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
What's that?
What do you think about that? You
agree? Hey, I'm asking the questions here. Okay?
I know.
What do you do with the sticks in the mud? The analytical types, on the disc, right? The compliant, the steady relators, that's very interesting. We will take this under advisement. Please send me the manual and 18 copies of the manual in 37 languages. And we must read this. I mean, like you can't get them to crack a smile. How do you differentiate yourself to those guys?
You may not be able to, but and you have to figure out how critical are they. How do I? It gets into stakeholder mapping. It gets into any kind of key account planning where you're thinking antagonist or supporter or where they sit. By and large, that type needs time. So you're not going to do pressure. You're not going to say, hey, yeah, take time. How much time do you think you need? So you want to come alongside of them, right? You're not going to try to force them to go to your schedule. I'm an expressive. High expressive social style. My challenge is analyticals, right? A story I tell is that, I did a training once it was Ernst & Young. And if I use the word, here's a trick I know, like if you're a client, here's a trick you can use, the analyticals go crazy. But if I say, here's a technique I know, the analyticals go, oh, I like techniques. I don't like tricks, but I like techniques. So language starts to get really precise if I'm calling on a stick in the mud type. I'm choosing my words much more wisely than I am with the other styles, pretty much. Because of my instincts to be hyperbolic, to be expressive, to be humorous, to be that person is going to just it's just going to suck all the oxygen out of them. And so I've got to really be versatile. I really got to, so that they can hear me, so that we can have a conversation, so that they feel heard.
Yeah. I always tell people, it's our job as salespeople. We have to adjust how we sell to match how the prospect buys.
Yeah, it's always about them. It's just. I know it sucks, but but it is about them, right? And adjusting to them and their style and where they sit, and just deciding how much. We teach people how to treat us, and so how much power am I going to give this? Sales is also about power, use of power. This is somebody who's not strategic to the selling and they want 18 copies of this or that. I don't know if I can do that for you. Here's what I can do. But I'm not going to run around and, chew up a lot of time and energy and cost for somebody who doesn't matter as much in this particular sale. Or if I have other allies I know, I can say, hey, let me have, so-and-so, get them on the phone and say, I talked to your guy. He wanted 18 copies. I told him you would take care of it. But I'm trying to figure out how to manage that relationship too, because there's a whole dance there, as you know. Because we do teach people how to treat us. If we say to somebody, hey, I know you're busy. I don't want to take up too much of your time. We're sending a message that we're less than them.
Right.
But if we show up and say, hey, I believe I have an idea that can really save you a lot of money. Why don't we talk next Tuesday? That's different. Mm-hmm. Right. So words matter because they show your belief system and how you view yourself.
When do you know or take the risk of going around that stick in the mud, or at least finding another avenue in? It may be a peer, or going through a different division.
I mean, I'm more of a risk taker than not. So there's a great axiom. I think it might be, I don't know whose it is. It might be Rob Hoopsher. I think that's his name. Don't take no from somebody who can't say yes. So if they can't say yes, what am I doing here? If I don't have any business right now, what am I doing? I got 100% of zero right now. There's nothing at risk, because so if it comes to that, yeah, who else can I talk to? Who else can I go to? I still like to go to this contact rather. And I tend to be very direct, like, hey, we've had a couple conversations. Initially you showed interest. Now it seems to be waning. Tell me what's going on. And then shut up. Because, we all have our assumptions. Well, this person's a stick in the mud. They don't like my offering. They don't want to do it. They must have a favor. We can tell ourselves quickly a story that makes sense, that's cohesive, that's completely hogwash. And we could act upon that. Or we could have the guts to say to this person, hey, I'm trying to fill in some gaps here. And so I've had those conversations. And they tend to be productive, and I tend to be wrong. They tend to be not what I thought. Oh, well, that's no longer my project. I was just curious, but you really want to be talking to so-and-so. And when did this happen? And why didn't you tell me? Well, it's not my job to tell you how to manage your leads. So it's just interesting. It's just interesting that the speed at which we can tell a story that this is not the right contact, or they don't like our goods and services. They're not going to buy from us, and we really don't know anything because we haven't stayed curious. And instead we filled up that with our own assumptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. Oh, they weren't really qualified. Oh, they were always a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
No, dude, you just weren't good enough. You weren't good enough to find another angle in.
There's a great line. I don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better. Right. Yeah. I mean, and there's a truth to that.
Exactly. For sure. So we don't want to give away all the secrets, but the book is The 5 Lost Superpowers, Why We Lose Them and How to Get Them Back. And I'm linking to it here on the website, linking to to Amazon, right? And they can also get your first book, Moving from Models to Mindsets, Rethinking the Sales Conversation. And even with COVID, that's probably still a good interview to go listen to, huh? And a good book to have.
Oh, yeah. It holds up. I mean, because it's not, people that have appreciated it, like bought immediately into the idea that, most sales training, they want you to follow a model. They want you to do this. They want you to do that. But, getting to the underlying belief is everything, because I could teach you I could get you in a classroom and say, look, you need to ask better questions. And you need to challenge your customer with some questions that really, maybe, but you have to challenge them. But you're not going to do that if you believe that I want to be liked, or I believe that if I challenge people, they'll never buy from me. And whatever you're under, or I might offend them, so I'll lose everything, or whatever that belief is, you got to go there first and say, why is it important to believe this? What do you have to believe to behave this way? Mm-hmm. So we want you to behave this way, but what would you have to actually believe?
Mm-hmm.
And do you believe that? Because if you don't believe it, it's never going to happen. And I think a lot of sales training has failed for a long time because they've really avoided the underlying belief system. Mm-hmm. You have to believe you have value. You have to believe your time is of value. You have to believe your offering is different. And there's certain things that if you really believe them, they'll show up in terms of how you behave. But if we look at how salespeople behave often, some of those beliefs aren't there.
Yeah.
And that's what you're seeing.
Yeah. I always said the best salespeople, when you run across a great salesperson, they're, same with society, a small percentage will be just psychopaths, but most of them are just very well put together human beings.
Yeah, it's you're right, by the way. Some of them are probably psychopaths.
I've worked with some. I mean, I was back in the day.
I hear you. I feel you.
I won't say what business because people could piece some things together, but I worked with a guy. He was younger, less experienced, came in and was beating me. And we were like out of a couple thousand salespeople in the country. I was like 26th in the country in my first year. And he was like 15th, but he was a psychopath. He was literally manipulating paperwork and just it all blew up, and he was gone and literally in rehab. But hey, he had a good 6 or 8 months. But everyone else, good salespeople I've known over the years they're wired well. I mean, they're empathetic. They're, attention to detail. They're intuitive. They've mastered the art and the science. And so it is a profession, the profession of sales. It's still kind of chaps my ass, man, dealing with techie people. I sell CRMs and kind of technical stuff still. And these techie guys will always be like, how do you sell so much? Because even after all these years, I'm still like, I'm good at the software. I'm not great. I mean, there's 100 other people 100 times better than me at jiggling that software and make it, shake, rattle, and hum. But I sell more, and it's because I just focus on the person. But these techie people, I would never, like, if I walked up to a technical coder and go, wow, man, how do you code so well? It'd be kind of an insult, right? Like, this shit's really easy. How come I'm not getting it? And like, dude, because there's a lot to professional selling.
Yeah. No, it is.
They're looking for that easy button. It's like, if there was an easy button, it would cost you $1 trillion.
We do a quick activity. What's the difference between a professional and amateur? And the difference is a professional gets paid. So anytime you're doing stuff for free, you're an amateur. Now, it's a little harsh, but it's to make a point. You start sending free samples, free this, free that. We're not going to charge you for the pilot. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. It's amateur hour. Professionals doctors don't do. I'll do a free surgery, see how it goes, and then it's a profession or it's not a profession, and I tend to think it's a profession.
Yeah. Yep. Amen. Well, man, I hope you stay warm in Jersey.
Yep.
If you're tired of it, you can come to the oppressive California, but at least we have nice weather.
Will do. It's been great to be with you.
Great catching up. John Reid, multiple author, salesman, consultant, great human being. Thanks for coming on the show, man. Great catching up with you.
Take care.
Don't take a no from someone who can't say yes. Amen. I remember Anthony Parinello, we got into that. His book, Selling to Vito, the Very Important Top Officer. I met Anthony years ago here in Southern California, and it was awesome. Had him sign an early edition book of his that I had worn through. And that was probably the first time I realized. I handed him the book, and he kind of paused and kind of extended it, flipped through it lovingly. It's highlighted. I got notes in the margins. I've got sticky notes, as bookmarks. And I was like, oh no, he's going to be mad I tore up the book, right? But he was like, oh, I appreciate this. And I get it now, right? Because you see people, so many times we buy stuff, we don't use it. And it's like, I want you to use my stuff. I want you to get the Sales Whisperer Way book at 79stories.info. Get you a signed copy and use that thing. Spill coffee on it. Bookmark it. I don't rip pages out. Tape them to your desk. But it was cool seeing him do that. But Anthony talked about, Vito, the very important top officer, and Seymour, who gets shunted down to, he says, if you're standing on linoleum, you probably aren't going to make the sale. But he brought up, the similar point. Don't be talking to people that can't say yes. It's crazy. I love what he talks about, differentiation. I've always said, you prove you're different by being different. Be different from the beginning. Use humor. Humor is fantastic. It's like nitroglycerin, though. A little goes a long way, so don't overdo it. Okay, so go back and listen to this. A lot of good info. John's a straight shooting guy. That's why I had him back. Get his books. After you get my book, you better have my book. It's so funny. I've got one of the members of the Make Every Sale live group. She's actually local, works for my insurance agent. And when you join the live group, I'll spoil this for you, but I send a signed copy of my book. And she's been in the group a long time. And over Christmas, I start seeing she's tagging me on Instagram, like over and over and over again with screenshots from my book. And then I saw her. She ordered a couple more for some friends. She came by the house and picked them up. She's like, oh my gosh, you should write more. And I'm like, you're just now reading this book. It's sat on her shelf for half a year. But hey, she's reading it now. But it's cool to see. So I'm not tooting my own horn, okay? It's pretty damn good, and it'll help you grow. So 79stories.info. Get you some of that, along with makeeverysale.com. Promo code 2022. Save you 50%. Thanks for listening. Now go sell something.